All right, here we go. Let's start. I think we're at 14 and combining supply and demand. Okay. Now, we learned supply and demand the last 2 days, and we learned them as separate concepts. Okay? I'm hoping that today will make sense because really supply and demand are not separate concepts. They go together. Buyers and suppliers are always interacting with each other. Okay? And that's what we're going to talk about today is how they interact with each other and how that influences the market. Okay, which is really just the price and the quantity of the things that we're buying. Okay, so today is all about combining the two concepts and putting them together. And we're going to start with a graph. We love graphing in econ class. So here we go. Okay, I am going to put the graph up here, supply and demand graph, and then I'm going to take some notes alongside the graph to hopefully help it all makes sense. So remember, every time we're graphing supply or demand, we're always showing the relationship between price and quantity. And our supply curve always slopes up and to the right. Label that with an S. And our demand curve always slopes down and to the right. We label that with a D. Easy way to remember supply and demand because we will draw this graph a lot. Supply to the sky, demand to the land. I know, that's cheesy, but that will help you. I can't tell you the number of times I've graded supply and demand graphs on a test and students flip-flop the supply and demand and then you get it wrong. That's not cool. Okay? Supply to the sky, demand to the land. And then we want to always label what we call the equilibrium. It's the point where these two curves intersect. And I'm just going to draw a dotted line like this. And we label this P for price and Q for quantity. Supply to the sky, demand to the land, Taylor Suzanne. And so there we go. Now, if you are asked to draw a supply and demand graph on a test, this is what your graph needs to look like. You need to have your curves labeled. You have to have each axis labeled. And you have to have your equilibrium labeled, just like I have here with the dotted lines. Okay? If you do that, easy money. Okay? Easy points. Usually you'll have to draw a graph like this, and then you have to make a change. But the graph will be worth multiple points. One for setting the graph up correctly, and then the second point or third point for making the correct change. Yes, Mr. Jose? Okay, so yes, these lines could really be a curve, but for like just ease of drawing, we usually draw them as a straight line. And you won't be graded down for that. Like, this is totally fine. Okay? Welcome. All right. Now I'm going to make some notes. You wouldn't normally put these notes on there, but I'm going to add them to our graph so we can make sense of all this. So this point right here, okay, where the two curves intersect, we call that the equilibrium. So I'm going to put here equilibrium. Bless you. Equilibrium. Now the significance of the equilibrium, okay, is this is the price where quantity supplied and quantity demanded are equal. So we'll say it's price where, and I'm going to abbreviate here, quantity supplied is equal to quantity demanded. Now the significance of that is this is the price, okay, the selling price where suppliers are supplying the same amount that buyers want to buy. Think about that. Let's say you're selling donuts and you own a bakery, okay? You've established a price, and at the end of the day, you have sold all your donuts, and all of your customers that wanted donuts got a donut. That's magical, okay? That's what the equilibrium is all about. It's the price where the amount that's being supplied is equal to the amount that buyers want to buy. Now, in reality, that doesn't happen all the time, okay? And so when that doesn't happen, we are not always at equilibrium. But what you have to understand is that the interaction between buyers and sellers will always try to get us to this point, this equilibrium point. Okay? So let's, I'm going to try to change color. I hope it shows up on here. Let's see. Let's go red. Okay? And I'm going to put a new price on here. We're going to call this P1. P1. So this price is going to be set above our equilibrium. Okay? And now I'm going to draw some more dotted lines. And we're going to show that that's a point. And that's a point. And the first point at P1 represents the amount that people would buy at price P1. So we're going to put QD. But P1, QD represents the quantity demanded, right? It's where P1 and our demand curve intersect. Okay? Call that the quantity demanded. And our second point over here represents QS. I'm running out of room. QS stands for quantity supplied. So what we can see using our graph is when our price is set above equilibrium, the amount that suppliers want to supply is greater than the amount that buyers want to buy. That's not equilibrium. Okay, and most of you have heard this term already, right? This is called a surplus. So we'll put over here surplus, if I can fit it in. Okay, so a surplus is equal to, this scenario will say price is set above equilibrium. Set above equilibrium. And quantity supplied is greater than, that was bad, quantity demanded. That's a greater than sign. It was a horrible greater than sign, but I tried twice, and I just didn't want to do it again. So a surplus is a scenario where we set our price too high, okay, it's above the equilibrium, and suppliers want to supply more than buyers want to buy. So if you owned a bakery and you set your price, at a certain price point, and you make a whole bunch of donuts, right? As many as you feel like you should make at that price, and nobody comes in to buy donuts that day, you've got a problem, right? Your supply is greater than the amount that buyers want to buy. We call that a surplus. Okay? That's not cool because that's not equilibrium. Now, what if we set our price too low? Ruh-roh is right. Let me see. Let's try to go blue. So I'm going to set a price below equilibrium. Let's call it P2. You guys see that okay? P2? All right, now at P2, let's do the same thing. Draw the nice little dotted lines. Make your points. Now, at P2, this represents the quantity supplied. And this dot out here represents the quantity demanded. So it's the exact opposite scenario. We have set our price too low. We have more buyers available than what we are willing to supply at that price. And whenever that happens, we call that a shortage. So we'll put shortage over here. And a shortage is equal to the scenario where price is set below equilibrium. Say price is set below equilibrium and quantity demanded is greater than quantity supplied. QD is greater than QS. That's a shortage. So you own a bakery, you set your price at 25 cents for a donut, and you open up your doors in the morning, and you've got a line that's going out the door around the block, and by 10 o'clock that morning, you're out of donuts, and there are still people that want donuts. Okay? That's a shortage. Now, anytime, this is what we mean, okay, that prices will always move towards equilibrium. Anytime there's a surplus or anytime there's a shortage, okay, there's interaction. There's communication going on between buyer and seller, right? And so the seller needs to adjust their price to try to find that equilibrium so we can find the balance where quantity supplied and quantity demanded are equal to each other. That's always the goal. Do you think it's easy to find the equilibrium? It's not, right? But that's always the goal. That's always where we're moving towards. And you can walk into the mall. You can see this happening all around, okay? Prices or businesses are always trying to adjust prices to find that balance. If you went into the mall right now, summer's coming to an end. There's probably clothing stores in there or stores in there that are selling summer gear, summer apparel, whatever, and they want to get rid of it. They don't want it any longer, right? And so they're going to have a sale because they're going to lower their price to eliminate the surplus that they have. They have too much. And so that's just an example of a business attempting to find that equilibrium. Okay? All right. I'm going to move to a new page. Okay? We're going to go over two examples here. Example one. Sorry, Blue. You gone. Example one. And we're going to call this changing demand. Changing demand. All right. Now let's draw a graph. Of course, we love graphs. And let's set it up just like we did on the last page. We're going to do price, quantity, and remember, demand to the land, supply to the sky. And we need to label that equilibrium. Q and P. And let's put down an example. Let's say, this is our scenario. Let's say find how price and quantity will change for Doritos. Oh, we love Doritos. When we'll say consumer income increases. So we have to try to figure out when consumers have more money, how is that change in consumer income going to influence the price and quantity in our market for Doritos? Okay? First thing I have to figure out is when consumer income changes, is that a determinant of supply or demand? It's demand, right? You can even look in the back board. I have them all written up there. Look at demand determinants. Income. Now, we do need to know if Doritos are an inferior or a normal good. We're just going to assume right now that Doritos are normal. Okay? They are normal goods, which means that as you have more money, you buy more of it. So now I have to show that change on my graph. Okay? I know that when income increases, that is going to create an increase in demand. Okay? And that's what I need to change on my graph. So I go back to my graph. And I need to know that I'm going to take the demand curve and I'm going to shift it to the right because that represents an increase in demand. So you always draw arrows. So I draw my arrows. I'm going to draw a new demand curve. I'm going to label that D1. And now all I have to do is I have to find the new equilibrium. So the new equilibrium is going to be where my new demand curve intersects with my supply curve. It's going to be right at that point. And I label that new equilibrium P1 and Q1. And now I can see that when individuals have more money, if we're looking at the market for Doritos, okay, people buy more Doritos, and that increase in the demand should cause an increase in price and an increase in quantity that people want to buy, and that's being supplied over time. Okay? And that's pretty much how we use our supply and demand graph. We isolate a scenario, and we try to figure out how does that scenario cause the market for whatever good we're talking about to change. In this case, it would be Doritos. Questions on that at all? Yo. Okay, so here's the deal. Think about what's happening here. We had an increase in income, right? That caused an increase in demand. The demand curve shifted to the right. Okay? Now, as soon as this demand curve shifts to the right, like we have here, okay, that is going to indicate that something's happening. Think about this. When we don't change the price, and this shifts to the right, if you keep the price here at P, we're going to end up with, this is our supply, and this is our demand out here now. So people are going to be demanding more than what is supplied at the original price. Now, if you're a business owner, what has happened is the increase in income created a shortage for Doritos. Okay? So what do you do when there's a shortage? Raise the price. So this scenario of the shortage, because the demand is going to cause prices to go up, and as prices go up, we slide along our supply curve until we found that new. So really, every time there's a change in demand, that will create a change in price, a change in quantity supply to balance back out. Okay, that's really okay. All right, we're going to go over one more example at 3 minutes. Here we go. Yes. Yes, if demand never changed, then it would have stayed as a shortage. A shortage. Because people are buying more than what's being supplied. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, but the demand had to change. If the price never changed, then it would have been a shortage. Does that make sense? All right, so example 2. We go back to new graph. Demand of the land, supply of the sky. I'm going to go through this a little quick because we're running out of time. We can answer more questions about this tomorrow. Price and quantity. Okay, now our scenario here is, sticking with Doritos theme, we're going to say find the change in price and quantity when the cost of nacho cheese increases. Who's cheese? Nacho cheese. Okay. All right. So we need to know that this change in nacho cheese price is going to cause a decrease in supply. So I need to show that on my graph. Remember, left is always less, so now I'm going to take my supply curve and shift it to the left. I got a new supply curve. I find my new equilibrium, P1 and Q1, and I can see that because of the increase in resource prices, my supply decreased, the price of Doritos is going to go up, and the amount being supplied and bought is going to fall. That's what our graph illustrates. Okay? That would be a change in supply. Okay, so now we've combined supply and demand. Correct. Cost is always supply. All right, your assignment then, just try to answer the multiple choice questions. Just try to answer the multiple choice questions, not the reinforcement questions. Okay? There is a module, Module 7, that goes with this stuff that will help you out a little bit as well.